In today's video, I'm having a quick review of last week's news. We're also going to have a quick look at what's going on with the US stimulus at the moment and if there's going to be an extension. And beyond all of that, my thoughts on Tesla joining the S&P 500. Hello and welcome to another acysecurities market update. My name is Alistair Schultz and I'm going to be hosting today's trading journey. The first thing I'm looking at today is going over what's gone on last week in the news. Now today I've specifically left out some of the implications of coronavirus purely because there's just been a lot of it in the past week. It really does fix up the chart to be unlegible to be reading. So what we have today is looking through what actually has impacted on price. And the big moves that I've seen so far have really resolved around this idea of stimulus coming out of the US. Now I am looking at an Australian-New Zealand chart, not one that's even related to the USD, but we can see the valuations and where prices actually moved around in these currencies, even though this pair clearly doesn't have any US dollar influence technically. So looking at the big ones over the week has been talk about what's happening with this US economy stimulus bill, if it's going to get extended. Of course, we've also heard from the ECB, and the ECB was interested in knowing whether or not they would be able to get their banks in the Eurozone to defer all dividend payments for at least a period of time to try and help with some of that liquidity and the money supply. Now, beyond that, we've been looking at things coming out of Germany and the euro itself, obviously, but the rest of it's really focused around coronavirus. So if you do want to have a look, scroll in on this chart and pause the screen now, and you'll be able to get a better look at what's going on and have a Google around that a bit later. Now, moving on to the US stimulus. Democrats and Republicans cannot agree on what they want to do at the moment. And it is really crucial point in time now because people are about to start running out of money. And the stimulus extension bill, as we know, last time when they tried to implement it, took a little bit of time for money to get into people's pockets. Last round, it was $600 a week per person who was able to be eligible for it. This time, Democrats are simply seeking an extension. The Republicans, however, are seeking a reduction to occur first. So there's no contention about whether or not there should actually be stimulus. It's about how much the stimulus is. Republicans are really seeking this reduction to happen. They're looking at cuts of about $200 towards the end of September. And then once we get through September, the idea is that it would be no more than 70% of full-time wages thereafter. So that means that for some people that would be getting the benefits, it would mean $235 per week to survive, which really isn't enough, regardless of whether you're looking at your rental income, if you've got health insurance or anything else that comes into it. There's just simply not enough dollars there. So the Republicans, Democrats really arguing it up. Congress has been on this for about 2 weeks, if not longer already, but it's really only gotten the media attention in the last few weeks. So definitely something to keep a look at, because if it does go through, it means we are going to be seeing more stimulus for the US. And each time we get more stimulus for the US, we do see the stock markets go up and we do see the value of the currency start to fluctuate a little bit as well. So keep an eye on that. Let's see if we can get something across the line, hopefully this week, so that the average Joe can get some burgers for lunch. Now, moving on to the next bit, Tesla and the S&P 500. There's been some interest around this, and I'm actually quite interested in it as well. Now, if Tesla is to join the S&P 500, they have, by all definitions, surpassed all the requirements that they have to have. At a minimum, $8 billion is the company valuation it needs to be. Tesla well exceeds that. And they also need to show quarters of profit consecutively, 4 of them. That's been done as well. So now there is a possibility of them entering into the S&P. Now, naturally, Standard & Poor's hold the right to back anyone away from that, but the chances are they will likely end up there. Now, the interesting factor that comes in this, there is going to be very few days' notice to say when that's going to happen, which doesn't leave a lot of time to build a strategy around it. At the same time that we see Tesla enter, we're likely to see E-Trade and Tiffany Co. leave purely because of acquisitions. They're going to be joining and merging into other companies. And the S&P is not really saying a lot just yet about how it's all going to look if Tesla is actually enabled to go in there. And if it does, it means that they're going to be the 17th largest firm in the S&P 500. The approaches around this are actually going to be quite difficult. Now, if you think about it logically, you've got some people who might be long-term holders and supporters of Tesla, and they would have seen their stock prices rally a lot. Entering into the S&P 500 opens up a new kettle of fish, meaning that it might mean that they want to start tapering or trimming some of their positions to enable them to have more opportunity and to diversify their portfolios a little bit better. The same thing might be said true about ETFs and indexes. They may try to buy big. But from what I can see so far off the bat, if they're in order to balance their portfolios, especially in some of the cases, then they're needing to look at about $35 to $40 billion in reductions in other measures that they've got and investments that they have in the same ETF to make room for Tesla. So we are going to have a look at this. It is going to be an interesting situation. Both sides of this, one side trying to trim, one side trying to buy big, means we might get a cancellation out and there's no effect. But the chances of that are very unlikely. So definitely something to keep an eye on. If you do trade Tesla, be wary at the moment. And of course, if you are trading the S&P 500, you always have to have your guard up for this. Now, moving on, the euro. The euro has appreciated all through the month of July. Now, it is an interesting thing to look at because you've got the US with a bad situation. The euro's got a bad situation as well. But you have a stronger euro going on more often than not, and that does put a little bit of pressure on those exporting nations that are in the eurozone, such as Germany. Now, obviously, there's a lot of consumer confidence kicking in right now. Stock market is flying up. People are actually starting to buy things in the euro area. So the overlap is quite good for their economy overall, and I think that outweighs the negative side effects that you might see for the exports, because either way, more people are going to be buying things, which means you're going to have to import and export more things as well. Now, what it does really reflect, though, is the weakening US dollar. If you were to look at the Eurozone and then you look at the US situation, especially when it comes to coronavirus, you can tell there is a very stark difference between the two. And naturally, that is where we're seeing some of the appreciation coming into the euro at the moment. So something out there for you guys that are trading your currencies quite regularly and something to think about. Now, having a look at my watch list for this week, I'm looking for a number of different things. I'm going to be looking at the Australian cash rate and the rate statement this Tuesday and Friday. Now, it is going to have a few different things happening around that. I don't anticipate seeing a cash rate reduction. We heard from the governor not too long ago saying that we could have gone to 0.1, but he thought that 0.25 was really as low as we could go. So don't expect too much on the cash rate or the rate statement that we see on Tuesday. Look instead to what we're seeing on Friday from the RBA monetary policy statement, which may indicate some changes towards where they want to go with the overall extension or at least easing of QE. So keep an eye there. I have a feeling that there might be a little bit of tightening, but the Victoria situation does make it very uncertain at the moment. Now, we've also got New Zealand unemployment changes and their rate coming out as well this week. The New Zealand Bank, or the Reserve Bank of New Zealand, is going to be looking for a lot of economic data this week. There's a few different releases that are going on. So keep an eye on some of those New Zealand releases if you do trade it. Obviously, we need to see what the RBNZ is going to be thinking in the weeks ahead when the next reports are due. Now, we're also going to be hearing from the Bank of Japan's Governor Kuroda. Keep an eye on that. Monetary policy statements out of the UK as well. And of course, usual spokesperson thinks. And the big one, don't forget, Friday is non-farm payroll. So it's usually quite a big event. First Friday of the month. Let's keep an eye on that one moving forward. Now, the news ahead of today. We have Canadian bank holidays. We have the manufacturing PMI out of China. We have manufacturing PMI out of France, Italy, Germany, and Spain. So even though they're all going to be low impact events, because they're all being released at pretty much the same time, keep an eye on that for your euro. Hopefully we do see some good figures coming out, particularly with the increasing value of the euro, but keep an eye. You never know. Now, the next one is the ISM manufacturing for PMI tonight in the US. That is going to be much later on at about 1 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. That's all I have for you today. Now, naturally, if you do want to get in contact with me, there's a variety of different ways, but the best one's probably talk2al@acy.com. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe to this video so you get more great content from me and ACY Securities in the future. Have a great trading day ahead.